Hare Krishna, everyone, and welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, which has become the life and soul of at least 1,177 devotees around the world. And however many of you who are out there listening right now, live, or will be within the next day or two, or whatever, when you can, we welcome you.
Thank you. Well done.
All right, here we are. We're going through a very interesting section of the Srimad-Bhagavatam in which the universe is unfolding. The generations of personalities who populated the universe and disseminated knowledge to the universe and set up the systems of the workings of the universe are being described. And even though sometimes only the names are just mentioned, this is a long period of time that this historical document is covering. So you should know that every one of these persons who are mentioned in the Bhagavatam are really special people, and just the sound of their names is purifying, as we heard yesterday. Okay. Srimad-Bhagavatam Mahima Stotram, from the Sri Krishna Lila Stava, glorifications of the Srimad-Bhagavatam by Srila Sanatana Goswami, the senior disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the older brother of Rupa Goswami. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kali Dvanduditaditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nishtadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhuta dayin atini chochata kada hanamun chagada chinmam premna rit kanta yoskura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen. You see, there's no excuses. Even if you're thinking you're the most fallen, that's not an excuse. You can get it anyway. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, here we are. A pastime is going to unfold in front of our ears. Lord Shiva has just been cursed by Daksha. And now we're going to see what happens when you curse Lord Shiva, or try to curse Lord Shiva. Canto 4, Chapter 2, Text 20. Upon understanding that Lord Shiva had been cursed, Nandishwara, one of Lord Shiva's principal associates, became greatly angry. His eyes became red, and he prepared to curse Daksha and all the Brahmanas present there, who had tolerated Daksha's cursing Shiva in harsh words. Purport. There is a long-standing dissension among some of the neophyte Vaishnavas and Shaivites. They are always at loggerheads. When Daksha cursed Lord Shiva in harsh words, some of the Brahmanas present might have enjoyed it, because some Brahmanas do not very much admire Lord Shiva. This is due to their ignorance of Lord Shiva's position. Nandishwara was affected by the cursing, but he did not follow the example of Lord Shiva, who was also present there. Although Lord Shiva could have cursed Daksha in a similar way, he was silent and tolerant. But Nandishwara, his follower, was not tolerant. Of course, as a follower, it was right for him not to tolerate an insult to his master, but he should not have cursed the Brahmanas who were present. The entire issue was so complicated that those who were not strong enough forgot their positions. And thus cursing and counter-cursing went on in that great assembly. In other words, the material field is so unsteady that even personalities like Nandishwara, Daksha, and many of the Brahmanas present were infected by the atmosphere of anger. This is a great lesson for all of us, especially now at this time in history, when there's so much polemics and so many people with diverse opinions, and the polemics are getting, deeper and deeper, and the opinions are getting more and more extreme on both sides of a political spectrum, and therefore it's very difficult to sit down and have a meaningful and progressive conversation with anybody nowadays. Opinions are so polarized. It's Kali Yuga. But now we can see this is in the beginning of the universe. So therefore it's proof that the modes of passion and ignorance were there from the beginning. And it's the modes of passion and ignorance that cause these kinds of things to happen, no matter how well-intentioned we are and how bona fide. This is a bona fide sacrifice. This is Daksha. The Daksha means expert, and he was really super expert and empowered by Lord Brahma to do these kinds of sacrifices. So the message is, the moral of the story is, we have to be very careful while we're in this material world. Text 21. Anyone who has accepted Daksha as the most important personality and neglected Lord Shiva because of envy is less intelligent, and because of visualizing in duality will be bereft of transcendental knowledge. Purport. The first curse by Nandishwara was that anyone supporting Daksha was foolishly identifying himself with the body. And therefore, because Daksha had no transcendental knowledge, supporting him would deprive one of transcendental knowledge. Daksha, Nandishwara said, identified himself with the body like other materialistic persons, and was trying to derive all kinds of facilities in relationship with the body. He had excessive attachment for the body, and in relation to the body, with wife, children, home, and other such things, which are different from the soul. Therefore, Nandishwara's curse was that anyone who supported Daksha would be bereft of transcendental knowledge of the soul, and thus also deprived of knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One little note that I should tell for those of you who are new and are just hearing these scriptures for the first time. This doesn't mean that we don't naturally feel affection for family members and those close to us. We do. But because the objects of that affection are temporary. Therefore, if we are excessively attached to the point where we lose our attraction and our spiritual affection and for spiritual advancement, then it becomes detrimental. You know, some of the greatest souls in the universe have stayed in family life with their families and become exemplars of persons who went back to Godhead. So it's not that it's not an absolute rule that you have to leave your family in order to advance spiritually. But it is an absolute rule that if you become too attached to material things, no matter what they are, including your own body, then the potency, the strength, the spiritual strength to go forward and at the time of death to fix your heart in love of God becomes impossible. Therefore, we should start this process actually immediately, if not sooner. The process of becoming attached to Krishna and therefore detached from matter and the forms of matter, no matter what they are. 22. Pretentiously religious householder life, in which one is attracted to material happiness and thus also attracted to the superficial explanation of the Vedas, robs one of all intelligence and attaches one to fruitive activities as all in all. Purport. Persons who identify with bodily existence are attached to the fruitive activities described in the Vedic literature. For example, in the Vedas it is said that one who observes the Chaturmasya vow will attain eternal happiness in the heavenly kingdom. For those of you who don't know what the Chaturmasya vow is, there's 4 months of the rainy season in India in which there's so much rain that it prevents people from moving around. So the Vedas describe that the spiritual sadhus, the persons who are cultivating spiritual life, they will sit down in one place during those 4 months and just concentrate on their spiritual activities. Like we're concentrating here every day on hearing Srimad-Bhagavatam. They would sit down for 4 months and do very severe austerities because they would rather travel around, because traveling around is an austerity, in case you haven't done much traveling. Mm-hmm. I've done a lot of it in my life, and it's very austere. But so not to become complacent, they would sit down in one place during the rainy season and do severe austerities. Like they would eat once a day, as much as they can eat off the ground with their hands behind their back, like eating like a cow would eat, you know, in one breath. As much as you can get into your system in one breath, and that's it. That's all you're allowed to eat for the day. And, you know, severe austerities. That's Chaturmasya. So I'll repeat that. For example, in the Vedas it is said that one who observes the Chaturmasya vow will attain eternal happiness in the heavenly kingdom. In the Bhagavad Gita it is said that this flowery language of the Vedas mostly attracts persons who identify with the body. To them such happiness as that of the heavenly kingdom is everything. They do not know that beyond that is the spiritual kingdom, or kingdom of God, and they have no knowledge that one can go there. Thus they are bereft of transcendental knowledge. Such persons are very careful in observing the rules and regulations of household life in order to be promoted in the next life to the moon or other heavenly planets. It is stated here that such persons are attached to Gramya Sukha, which means material happiness, without knowledge of eternal, blissful, spiritual life. Text 23. Daksha has accepted the body as all in all. Therefore, since he has forgotten the Vishnupada or Vishnu Gati and is attached to sex life only, within a short time he will have the face of a goat. Oops. Text 24. Those who have become as dull as matter by cultivating materialistic education and intelligence are nascently involved in fruitive activities. Such men have purposely insulted Lord Shiva. May they continue in the cycle of repeated birth and death. Purport. The three curses mentioned above are sufficient to make one as dull as stone, void of spiritual knowledge, and preoccupied with materialistic education, which is nations. After uttering these curses, Nandishwar then cursed the Brahmanas to continue in the cycle of birth and death because of their supporting Daksha in blaspheming Lord Shiva. Text 25. May those who are envious of Lord Shiva, being attracted by the flowery language of the enchanting Vedic promises, and who have thus become dull, always remain attached to fruitive activities. Purport. The Vedic promises of elevation to higher planets for a better standard of materialistic life are compared to flowery language, because in a flower there is certainly an aroma, but that aroma does not last for a very long time. In a flower there is honey, but that honey is not eternal. 26. These brahmanas take to education, austerity, and vows only for the purpose of maintaining the body. They shall be devoid of discrimination between what to eat and what not to eat. They will acquire money, begging from door to door, simply for the satisfaction of the body. Purport. The third curse inflicted by Nandishwara on the Brahmanas who supported Daksha is completely functioning in the age of Kali. The so-called Brahmanas are no longer interested in understanding the nature of the Supreme Brahman, although a Brahmana means one who has attained knowledge about Brahman. In the Vedanta Sutra also it is stated, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. This human form of life is meant for realization of the Supreme Brahman, the Absolute Truth, or in other words, human life is meant for one's elevation to the post of a Brahmana. Unfortunately, the modern Brahmanas, or so-called Brahmanas who come in originally Brahminical families, have left their own occupational duties, but they do not allow others to occupy the posts of Brahmanas. The qualifications for Brahmanas are described in the scriptures, in Srimad-Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and all other Vedic literatures. Brahmana is not a hereditary title or position. If someone from a non-Brahmana family, for example one born in a family of Shudras, tries to become a Brahmana by being properly qualified under the instruction of a bona fide spiritual master, these so-called Brahmanas will object. Such Brahmanas, having been cursed by Nandishwara, are actually in a position where they have no discrimination between eatables and non-eatables, and simply live to maintain the perishable material body and its family. Such fallen conditioned souls are not worthy to be called Brahmanas, but in Kali Yuga they claim to be Brahmanas, and if a person actually tries to attain the Brahminical qualifications, they try to hinder his progress. This is the situation in the present age. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu condemned this principle very strongly. During his conversation with Ramananda Roy, he said that regardless of whether a person is born in a Brahmana family or a Shudra family, regardless of whether he is a householder or a sannyasi, if he knows the science of Krishna, he must be a spiritual master. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had many so-called Shudra disciples, like Haridas Thakur and Ramananda Roy. Even the Goswamis, who were principal students of Lord Chaitanya, were also ostracized from Brahmana society. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by his grace, made them first-class Vaishnavas. Text 27. When all the hereditary Brahmanas were thus cursed by Nandishwara, the sage Bhrigu, as a reaction, condemned the followers of Lord Shiva with this very strong Brahminical curse. Purport. The word Duratyaya is particularly used in reference to Brahmadanda, or cursed by a Brahmana. A curse by a Brahmana is very strong, therefore it is called Duratyaya, or insurmountable. As the Lord states in Bhagavad Gita, the stringent laws of nature are insurmountable. Similarly, if a curse is uttered by a Brahmana, that curse is also insurmountable. But Bhagavad Gita also says that the curses or benedictions of the material world are, after all, material creations. The Chaitanya Charitamrita confirms that which is accepted in this material world to be a benediction and that which is taken to be a curse are both on the same platform because they are material. To get out of this material contamination, one should take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as recommended in Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. The best path is to transcend all material curses and benedictions and take shelter of the Supreme Lord Krishna and remain in a transcendental position. Persons who have taken shelter of Krishna are always peaceful. They are never cursed by anyone, nor do they attempt to curse anyone. That is a transcendental position. Text 28. One who takes a vow to satisfy Lord Shiva, or who follows such principles, will certainly become an atheist and be diverted from the transcendental scriptural injunctions. Purport. It is sometimes seen that devotees of Lord Shiva imitate the characteristics of Lord Shiva. For example, Lord Shiva drank an ocean of poison, so some of the followers of Lord Shiva imitate him and try to take intoxicants like ganja, marijuana. Here the curse is that someone follows Here the curse is that if someone follows such principles, he must become an infidel and turn against the principles of Vedic regulation. It is said that such devotees of Lord Shiva will be such Shastra Paripantina, which means opposed to the conclusion of Shastra or scripture. This is confirmed in the Padma Purana also. Lord Shiva was ordered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to preach the impersonal or Mayavad philosophy for a particular purpose, just as Lord Buddha preached the philosophy of voidness for a particular purposes mentioned in the Shastras. Sometimes it is necessary to preach a philosophical doctrine which is against the Vedic conclusion. In the Shiva Purana, it is stated that Lord Shiva said to Parvati that in the Kali Yuga, in the body of a Brahmana, he would preach the Mayavad philosophy. Thus it is generally found that the worshippers of Lord Shiva are Mayavadi followers. Lord Shiva himself says, Mayavadam asat shastram. Asat Shastra, as explained here, means the doctrine of Mayavad impersonalism, or becoming one with the Supreme. Brigumuni cursed Brigumuni cursed that persons who worshipped Lord Shiva would become followers of this Mayavad, Asat Shastra, which attempts to establish that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is impersonal. Besides that, among the worshippers of Lord Shiva, there is a section who live a devilish life. Srimad-Bhagavatam and Narada Pancharatra are authorized scriptures that are considered Sat Shastra, or scriptures which lead one to the path of God realization. Asat Shastras are just the opposite. Text 29. Those who vow to worship Lord Shiva are so foolish that they imitate him by keeping long hair on their heads. When initiated in the worship of Lord Shiva, they prefer to live on wine, flesh, and other such things. Purport. Indulging in wine and meat, keeping long hair on one's head, not bathing daily, and smoking ganja, marijuana, are some of the habits which are accepted by foolish creatures who do not have regulated lives. By such behavior, one becomes devoid of transcendental knowledge. In the initiation into the Shiva mantra, there are mudrikashtaka, in which it is sometimes recommended that one make his sitting place on the vagina, and thus desire nirvana, or dissolution of existence. In that process of worship, wine is needed, or sometimes, in place of wine, palm tree juice, which is converted into an intoxicant. This is also offered according to Shiva Agama, a scripture on the method of worshipping Lord Shiva. Text 30. Bhrigu Muni continued, since you blaspheme the Vedas and the Brahmanas, who are followers of the Vedic principles, it is understood that you have already taken shelter of the doctrine of atheism. Purport. Bhrigu Muni, in cursing Nandishwar, said that not only would they be degraded as atheists because of this curse, but they had already fallen to the standard of atheism because they had blasphemed the Vedas, which are the source of human civilization. Human civilization is based on the qualitative divisions of social order, namely the intelligent class, the martial class, the productive class, and the laborer class. The Vedas provide the right direction for advancing in spiritual cultivation and economic development, and regulating the principle of sense gratification, so that ultimately one may be liberated from material contamination to his real state of spiritual identification, aham brahmasmi. As long as one is in the contamination of material existence, one changes bodies from the aquatics up to the position of Brahma. But the human form of life is the highest perfectional life in the material world. The Vedas give directions by which to elevate oneself in the next life. The Vedas are the mother for such instructions, and the Brahmanas, or persons who are in knowledge of the Vedas, are the father. Thus, if one blasphemes the Vedas and Brahmanas, naturally one goes down to the status of atheism. The exact word used in Sanskrit is nastika, which refers to one who does not believe in the Vedas, but manufactures some concocted system of religion. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said that the followers of the Buddhist system of religion are Nastikas. In order to establish his doctrine of non-violence, Lord Buddha flatly refused to believe in the Vedas, and thus later on Shankaracharya stopped this system of religion in India and forced it to go outside India. Here it is stated, Brahmacha Brahmanam. Brahma means the Vedas. Aham Brahmasmi means I am in full knowledge. The Vedic assertion is that one should think that he is Brahman, for actually he is Brahman. If Brahma, or the Vedic spiritual science, is condemned, and the masters of the spiritual science, the Brahmanas, are condemned, then where does human civilization stand? Bhrigu Muni said, it is not due to my cursing that you shall become atheists. You are already situated in the principle of atheism. Therefore, you are condemned. Text 31. The Vedas give the eternal regulated principles for auspicious advancement in human civilization, which have been rigidly followed in the past. The strong evidence of this principle is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is called Janardana, the well-wisher of all living entities. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, has claimed that he is the Father of all living entities, regardless of form. There are 8,400,000 different species of life forms, and Lord Krishna claims that he is the Father of all. Because the living entities are parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are all sons of the Lord. And for their benefit, because they are hovering under the impression that they can lord it over material nature, The Vedas are given to them for their guidance. Therefore the Vedas are called aparusheya, for they are not written by any man or demigod, including the first living creature, Brahma. Brahma is not the creator or author of the Vedas. He is also one of the living beings in this material world. Therefore, he does not have the power to write or speak the Vedas independently. Every living entity within this material world is subject to 4 deficiencies. He commits mistakes. He accepts one thing for another. He cheats, and he has imperfect senses. The Vedas, however, are not written by any living creature within this material world. Therefore, they are said to be aparusheya. No one can trace out the history of the Vedas. Of course, modern human civilization has no chronological history of the world or of the universe, and it cannot present actual historical facts older than 3,000 years. But no one has traced out when the Vedas were written, because they were never written by any living being within this material world. All other systems of knowledge are defective because they have been written or spoken by men or demigods who are products of this material creation. But Bhagavad Gita is aparusheya, for it was not spoken by any human being or any demigod of this material creation. It was spoken by Lord Krishna, who is beyond the material creation. That is accepted by such stalwart scholars as Shankaracharya, not to speak of other acharyas, such as Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya. Shankaracharya has accepted that Narayana and Krishna are transcendental. And in Bhagavad Gita also, Lord Krishna has established, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattak sarvam pravartate. I am the origin of everything. Everything emanates from me. This material creation, including Brahma and Shiva and all the demigods, has been created by him, for everything is emanated from him. He also says that the purpose of all the Vedas is to understand him. Vedaish Chasarvar Aham Eva Vedya. He is the original Vedavit, or knower of the Vedas, and Vedanta Krit, or compiler of Vedanta. Brahma is not the compiler of the Vedas. In the beginning of Srimad-Bhagavatam, it is established, Tene Brahma Rida, the Supreme Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead, instructed Brahma in the Vedic knowledge through his heart. Therefore, the evidence that Vedic knowledge is free from the defects of mistakes, illusions, cheating, and imperfection is that it is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Janardana, and has thus been followed from time immemorial, beginning from Brahma. The Vedic religion, or the principles of the Vedas, have been followed by the highly cultured population of India since time immemorial. No one can trace out the history of Vedic religion. Therefore, it is Sanatana, and any blasphemy against the Vedas is calculated to be atheism. The Vedas are described as Setu, which means a bridge. If one wants to attain his spiritual existence, one has to cross an ocean of nations. The Vedas are the bridge by which to cross such a great ocean. The Vedas describe how to divide the human race into 4 divisions according to quality and working capacity. This is a very scientific system, and it is also Sanatana, for no one can trace out its history, and it has no dissolution. No one can stop the system of Varna and Ashrama, or the castes and divisions. For example, whether or not one accepts the name Brahmana, there is a class in society which is known as the intelligent class, and which is interested in spiritual understanding and philosophy. Similarly, there is a class of men who are interested in administration and in ruling others. In the Vedic system, these martially spirited men are called Kshatriyas. Similarly, Everywhere there's a class of men who are interested in economic development, business, industry, and money-making. They are called Vaishyas. And there is another class who are neither intelligent, nor martially spirited, nor endowed with the capacity for economic development, but who simply can serve others. They are called Shudras, or the laborer class. This system is Sanatana. It comes from time immemorial, and it will continue in the same way. There is no power in the world which can stop it. Therefore, since this Sanatana Dharma system is eternal, one can elevate himself to the highest standard of spiritual life by following the Vedic principles. It is stated that formerly the sages followed this system. Therefore, to follow the Vedic system is to follow the standard etiquette of society. But the followers of Lord Shiva, who are drunkards, who are addicted to intoxicants and sex life, who do not bathe, and who smoke ganja, are against all human etiquette. The conclusion is that persons who rebel against the Vedic principles are themselves the evidence that the Vedas are authoritative, because by not following the Vedic principles, they become like animals. Such animalistic persons are themselves evidence of the supremacy of the Vedic regulations. Text 32. By blaspheming the principles of the Vedas, which are the pure and supreme path of the saintly persons, certainly you followers of Bhutapati, Lord Shiva, will descend to the standard of atheism without a doubt. Purport. Lord Shiva is described here as Bhutarat. The ghosts and those who are situated in the material mode of ignorance are called Bhutas, or Bhutarat. Bhutarat refers to the leader of the creatures who are in the lowest standard of the material modes of nature. Another meaning of Bhuta is anyone who has taken birth or anything which is produced. So in that sense, Lord Shiva may be accepted as the father of this material world. Here, of course, Bhrigu Muni takes Lord Shiva as the leader of the lowest creatures. The characteristics of the lowest class of men have already been described. They do not bathe, they have long hair on their heads, and they are addicted to intoxicants. In comparison with the path followed by the followers of Bhutarat, the Vedic system is certainly excellent, for it promotes people to spiritual life as the highest eternal principle of human civilization. If one decries or blasphemes the Vedic principles, then he falls to the standard of atheism. Text 33. The sage Maitreya said, when such cursing and counter-cursing was going on, Lord Shiva's followers and the parties of Daksha and Bhrigu, Lord Shiva became very morose. Not saying anything, he left the arena of the sacrifice, followed by his disciples. Purport. Here Lord Shiva's excellent character is described. In spite of the cursing and counter-cursing between the parties of Daksha and Shiva, because he is the greatest Vaishnava, he was so sober that he did not say anything. A Vaishnava is always tolerant, and Lord Shiva is considered the topmost Vaishnava. So his character, as shown in this scene, is considered is excellent. He became morose because he knew that these people, both his men and Daksha's, were unnecessarily cursing and counter-cursing one another without any interest in spiritual life. Sounds like the modern day, executive head and branch and other branches of government in America. From his point of view, that was me. That wasn't the... Now I'll get back to the purport. Sorry. Editorial comment. Hare Krishna. From his point of view, he did not see anyone as lower or higher because he is a Vaishnava. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Panditak Samadarshinaha. One who is perfectly learned does not see anyone as lesser or greater because he sees everyone from the spiritual platform. Thus, the only alternative left to Lord Shiva was to leave in order to stop his follower, Nandishvara, as well as Bhrigu Muni, from cursing and counter-cursing in this way. Text 34. The sage Maitri continued, O Vidura, all the progenitors of the universal population thus executed a sacrifice for thousands of years, for sacrifice is the best way to worship the Supreme Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead. Purport. It is clearly stated here that the stalwart personalities who generate the entire population of the world are interested in satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead by offering sacrifices. The Lord also says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam. One may engage in performing sacrifices and severe austerities for perfection, but they are all meant to satisfy the Supreme Lord. If such activities are performed for personal satisfaction, one is involved in pashanda, or atheism. But when they are performed for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, one is following the Vedic principle. All the assembled sages perform sacrifices for 1,000 years. All the assembled sages perform sacrifices for 1,000 years. Text 35. My dear Vidura, carrier of bows and arrows, all the demigods who were performing the sacrifice took their bath in the confluence of the Ganges and the Yamuna after completing the yajna performance. Such a bath is called Avabrita Snan. After thus becoming purified in heart, they departed for their respective abodes. Purport. After Lord Shiva and previously Daksha left the arena of sacrifice, the sacrifice was not stopped. The sages went on for many years in order to satisfy the Supreme Lord. The sacrifice was not destroyed for want of Shiva and Daksha, and the sages went on with their activities. In other words, it may be assumed that if one does not worship the demigods, even up to Lord Shiva and Brahma, one can nevertheless satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7:20. Kamais taistayar rittagyana prapadyantain yadevata. Persons who are impelled by lust and desire go to the demigods to derive some material benefit. In his commentary on this Bhagavad Gita verse, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur uses the very specific words nashta buddhya, meaning persons who have lost their sense or intelligence. Only such persons care for demigods and want to derive material benefit from them. Of course, this does not mean that one should not show respect to the demigods, but there is no need to worship them. One who is honest may be faithful to the government, but he does not need to bribe the government servants. Bribery is illegal. One does not bribe a government servant, but that does not mean that one does not show him respect. Similarly, one who engages in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord does not need to worship any demigod, nor does he have any tendency to show disrespect to the demigods. Elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita 9:23 it is said, Ye pyanya devata bhakta yajante shadayanvitaha. The Lord says that anyone who worships the demigods is also worshipping him, but he is worshipping avidipurvakam, which means without following the regulated principles. The regulated principle is to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Worship of demigods may indirectly be worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but it is not regulated. By worshipping the Supreme Lord, one automatically serves all the demigods because they are parts and parcels of the whole. If one supplies water to the root of a tree, all the parts of the tree, such as the leaves, the branches, and branches, are automatically satisfied. And if one supplies food to the stomach, all the limbs of the body, the hands, legs, fingers, etc., are nourished. Thus, by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can satisfy all the demigods, but by worshipping all the demigods, one does not completely worship the Supreme Lord. Therefore, worship of the demigods is irregular, and it is disrespectful to the scriptural injunctions. In this age of Kali, it is practically impossible to perform the Deva Yajna, or sacrifices to the demigods. As such, in this age, Srimad-Bhagavatam recommends Sankirtan Yajna. Yajnai Sankirtana Praya Yajantihi Sumedasaha. In this age, the intelligent person completes the performances of all kinds of yajnas simply by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Tasty. Tasmin tushte jagat tushta. When Lord Vishnu is satisfied, all the demigods who are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord are satisfied. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 2nd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Daksha Curses Lord Shiva. Another chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam has gone its way. Okay. I'm going to stop the reading. Okay, Patrick, Haribol. I'm going to stop the reading now. There's lots of nectar we've just heard. So let us have reflections. Anything that stood out in the reading that you might want to know more about, or that you want to reflect on and give your realizations to us. Please feel welcome. Oh, Hannah, you had your hand up. I almost didn't see it. Here, go ahead. Enlighten us further.
Okay, so earlier we were reading about how some people are attached to family life. I had a reflection today. So I went to a creek today, like a lake.
You went to a creek?
Yeah, and I sat on a rock like a sage. No, you can't sit on one of those. You can't sit on one of those.
Okay, go ahead.
So I sat on a rock like a sage, and I was chanting my japa. And when I looked in the water, I don't even know what this thing was. But there was like these like particles of something that were like floating down the river. And as they were floating down the river, it was like a group of them. And like 3 would come together, and they would break apart. And then 2 would connect together. And then the other 2 would go off and connect to a group. And there's actually an analogy of this, right? About...
Precisely.
So as I was seeing this, I was like, wow, that's like us. We come into the world, and whatever our desires are, whoever fulfills them, we become attached to them. But then it ends, and our desires might still be unfulfilled. So then we come to another life. It's the same thing. And I was just thinking, like, wow, Krishna must feel so bad for us, because he's just watching this over and over and over again.
Very nice. Thank you very much. That was great. That's meditation. That's what meditation is, to think like that. That doesn't mean meditation does mean to empty the mind, because you can't empty the mind, no matter how long you try. Even if you do it for a moment, your mind will then immediately start up again. You know, it's not possible. So this is what it means to meditate, to actually think deeply and thoughtfully about the principles that we're hearing about, and even in nature. There's a later on in the 12th canto, I think it's the 12th canto, anyway, maybe it's the 11th canto. Anyway, there's a section where a great liberated soul explains what he learned from watching nature. So it's true, what you just said. And But one point was brought up that I already said in the beginning, and that is that it's natural to be attached. You can't not be attached because it's part of the soul. Desire, the search for pleasure, the search for eternal life. It's there in the soul because that's what we're made of. That's who we are. We are eternal. We are blissful. And we are full of knowledge. We're just covered. All those qualities are covered by the material nature. So we can't stop attachment, and we can't stop from coming together, as you're talking about, and doing things with each other. That can't be stopped. The soul is by nature social animal. And in the spiritual world, there's social life. It's not that there's no social life because that's spiritual and this is material. So spiritual must be opposite to material. So in spiritual life, there must not be any social life or any relationships or any of the loving exchanges that we experience here in this material world. That's not like that. The difference is that those relationships are eternal. They don't change. You don't have to lose someone you love in the spiritual world. Therefore, we should want to go there. But we can't want to go there if we don't know about it. So our duty as human beings is to cultivate this knowledge, to hear exactly as we are hearing. When I heard the holy name, when we all chanted the holy name together, the Maha Mantra, which is so nice, the supreme sacrifice, I was realizing that the Srimad-Bhagavatam is the same. The chanting of the Srimad-Bhagavatam and the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is the same. So this is what we should be doing with our life, doing it ourselves and propagating it to others. Then the realization becomes activated. It becomes realized, and it becomes a source. It spreads to others. So your point is well taken, that Krishna, seeing all this going on, everybody coming together, going apart, coming together, trying to enjoy in this material world, is well taken, but he doesn't just sit up in the spiritual sky and lament like we do here. Oh, that's too bad, I can't do. He does something about it. He comes here regularly to the material world to show us what the absolute truth is and how to behave by his personal example. So if we follow Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's example, who is a very special appearance of Krishna, because he appears as a devotee of himself. He doesn't declare himself to be the supreme, whereas in other appearances he does, or others do, declare him to be so. But Lord Chaitanya, he didn't like it when the devotees figured out that he is Krishna, and started to glorify him as Krishna. He would put his hands over his ears and run away. No, you can't call me. Because he was acting as a living being, a regular living being, a servant of Krishna. So that's how kind Krishna is. He comes and even takes the position of an ordinary living being in order to teach us how to come back to him. So we should do that. We shouldn't just lament or look at how sad, how much the people are suffering and feel sad. We should do something about it. And don't think that you have to do something big to satisfy Krishna. If you just meet one person in your life and convince them to become a devotee, you'll go back to God just by doing that one thing. Of course, it's better if you do hundreds, thousands, but Hare Krishna, that's not for everybody. Okay, what else? Who else? Yes. Matthew.
Yes, Maharaj, I remember reading in one of the scriptures that a devotee should generally be grave, and that in the disciples course, one of the recommendations to avoid doing to your Maharaj is to something about smiling or laughing at them. but sometimes Maharajas are just really funny, and they make the whole room laugh. So, could you expand on like maybe what they're getting at with saying that?
To be grave doesn't mean you walk around with a stone-like face and mope. It also says Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma, a liberated soul, is jolly all the time. And Dhira Tatranamurti, he's not disturbed by the disturbances of the material world, because he knows very well that he's not material. And he watches everything. He feels compassion. He tries to help other people. And sometimes we may laugh along with a guru or something. I mean, Prabhupada had a fantastic sense of humor. You read it in his purports. He's tongue-in-cheek a lot of the time. He's tongue-in-cheek, making sarcastic, witty, dry wit comments about so many things, and we laugh, and he laughs along with us. But that doesn't mean that he derides. It's not that we deride each other by laughing. We laugh along with, And another thing is that we should also keep our sense of humor about us, especially about ourselves. We should learn to laugh at ourselves and how foolish we are. We do the most foolish things sometimes. And if we're too materially attached, we'll just get angry. When somebody points out how foolish we are, we'll just get angry, But we should learn to laugh at ourselves, to be able to laugh at ourselves, because we really are stupid to come here to this material world and think that we can get away with it. It's kind of like yes.
Just something you were saying kind of reminded me. I've been away from this little girl that I nanny for the last few weeks, and I just saw her today, and she's already just so different. She's a little bit more grown up in the way she's talking, and she said something to me today that kind of, she's 5 years old, about to turn 6 in a few months. And she said something to me today that she's always saying things that kind of catch me, that make me think, wow, this is very interesting. And she said something today that, and she said today, I was talking to her and I said, so this is the idea of or that's a great idea for your castle. And she goes, well, it's not an idea, it's how it is. And I said, okay. And she's like catching me, she's very assertive of her thoughts. But then she said something today. I said, well, when you grow up, you're a very good artist. When you grow up, or you're very good at drawing. I said, when you grow up, you can become an artist. And she looked at me and she goes, I already am an artist. And it was just the certainty that she had that I absolutely found divine. And the confidence, that little
very nice. When I was in the hospital in 2 years ago, I got typhoid fever, 50-day fever, almost died. And I got put into a hospital in Canterbury, in England, Kent, southeast England. And there was this one nurse, and I was watching her while she was doing her rounds and taking care of people. And she was like into it, like really into it. And so when she came by, and I don't remember what she was doing, but I say, you really like being a nurse, are you? How long have you been a nurse? She looked at me and she said, I am a nurse. I knew I was a nurse when I was a little girl. And it was so charming, the same thing. But this wasn't a young kid, this was an older person, So, then I thought of the system that Krishna's created, whereby we have to be engaged in this material world, and the way we should engage is in the way that that fits us, and that's what the Varnashram system is. See, the caste system from India has gotten a lot of bad press, because it kind of, the Brahmanas, as here we're hearing the root of this misconception. The Brahmanas are cursing, and all of these things. So the Brahmanas have a tendency to be proud because they are better in a sense. They're in the mode of goodness, they understand things, they can advise others, and they tend to be independent in their livelihood. You don't have to go around door to door to get a job after they get a piece of paper, wagging their tails as they go along for for a job. But the reality is that it is not rigid like it is in India now. It's not according to birth. Krishna says guna karma. I said this yesterday. It says guna karma vibhagasha, not janma karma. Janma karma would mean birth and activities, but guna karma, qualities and activities. So we should do, if we're an artist, we should be artists. I mean, I've counseled a lot of families, especially in the Indian society, because the parents are really kind of, they demand of their children that they do certain things that they want them to do without considering what they want to do. And it can cause problems, big problems, And so if a person's born in a Brahmin family and acts like a Shudra, they're to be considered Shudra. If they're born in a Shudra family and act like Brahmana, then they should be considered Brahmanas. On this principle, Lord Chaitanya came to revise or to reform the system, the caste system in the so-called Hindu society, by initiating persons and making them Brahmins or more than Brahmins, Vaishnavas, from whatever their birth was, and even putting them in the position of teacher, and he would ask them questions. And of course he was the one that was empowering them from within to answer properly. And they would often say so. He would ask them a question that they had no idea, and they would say, "You're doing this, aren't you?" So anyway, I don't know what I'm saying, but you're saying it, so here it is. And then they would give the answer. So in this is way that Lord Chaitanya was teaching us. So yes, we should do what is natural for us to do, but we should do it for Krishna. If we do just what's natural for us to do for ourselves, then we go down. Or we go up, and take a better birth in the next life and stay in the material world and just do it over and over and over again, Get into the womb of a mother and, like we heard the other day, go through that situation, Nice.
Oh,
Thank you. That was very nice. Yeah, from the mouths of babes, it says. I don't know what's the Bible or Shakespeare or someone. I can't remember.
Okay, this is an online question.
Online question.
It's from Shiva Kumar.
Shiva Kumar. Hare Krishna, Shiva Kumar.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Can you please explain how the curse works here? How the curses of Nandi and Brigu worked?
When you say how they worked, well, it's not a mechanistic thing. But it is. It's a law of nature. That if in nowadays we don't have the potency to curse one another, but we do have the power to wish a person well, or vice versa, and it makes a difference if you act in such a way as the people give you their well-wishing and they encourage you, and that helps you go forward in life. And if people are really, like trying to prevent you from going somewhere and doing something, it makes it harder. So that's a law of nature. And the laws of nature, how they came out in human society back in those days when everything was more potent, the people's brains and bodies and the food and the air and everything that we need to survive and live in this world, in those days it was all very pure and very powerful. Nowadays, you have to drink water out of a bottle or it's through some kind of filter in order to even just keep alive, practically, in some places. So, but real water that is flowing from a river like this, that's really pure, is potent, full of energy and full of potency. And before, in the Satya Yuga, you could eat a fruit off the tree and live a whole day just by eating one fruit. So the struggle for existence, it didn't exist. There were no factories, there were no, cultivated fields where people work in the fields. Everything was just in goodness, and all the trees had flowers and fruits, and the fruits were so potent you could eat just one and that was it for the day. So to meditate, to do spiritual, austerities, and to understand spiritual concepts, and to realize, that we're not the body. All those things were very easy to do in that way. But now, in the Kali Yuga, everything's more difficult. And therefore, Lord Chaitanya has given us this Sankirtan Yajna, which is here it's described that persons who were doing the sacrifice did so for thousands of years. So that's the answer to the question, how it works that persons can curse. Because it's the nature. It's the nature. The way nature works. It's the laws of nature. And the actual mechanics of it, how Krishna arranges it, that we can't understand the mechanics. We can't even understand how our body works, what to speak of the universe, what to speak of things like this. So it's not necessary to know the mechanics of it to take advantage of it. Just like we don't need to know, everything about how this works, the computer or some device or even the fireplace. We don't have to know the mechanics of how the fire comes out and how all that works, why it's hot. That's the nature. That's the way it is. It's created like that by nature. So when people think ill of each other, it has an effect in the laws of nature. And if a person is very powerful, just like nowadays, if somebody who's really powerful, is president of a country, or a super pop star or super athlete or whatever, they'll always ask them, well, what do you think of such? And they'll think, I think this, and everybody goes, oh. And then everybody becomes influenced by it. It's the nature, it's the way things work. Everyone idolizes somebody, but in the spiritual life, we idolize Krishna exclusively. And by doing that, we become potent by the grace of Krishna, because he's in the heart of everyone and he's organizing this. He's fulfilling the desires of all of us. So when these characters start counter-cursing each other, Krishna's there going, oh, here they go again, But because he's there and he cares for us, he gives us the facilities to do what we want to do. And if one person's powerful than the other, then his curse will be more effective than the other person's counter curse. And therefore, you have what is called a mess. This material world is a mess. And it's getting to be more of a mess. Sarva, you had something.
Just, sometimes
Wait.
Devotees are... Oops. Sorry.
You dropped the whole crowd.
What?
You dropped the crowd.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, show us there. We have to get one of those things that's more solid and has a thing that turns around. And we can get one. Yeah.
This one's Dunzo.
I know it's done, so it's been like that for a long time.
So devotees are individuals, and sometimes they have different opinions, but it seems important to respect devotees and not be too critical. So how does one have the right healthy attitude towards devotees and yet still sometimes have differences of opinions?
Fantastic. Sadhu, sadhu, sarva, long-standing sadhu. Yes, Lord Chaitanya gives us the formula. It's very, very easy. Amanina manadena, kirtani aksarahari. If we want to get a taste for chanting the holy names, in other words, if we want to get a taste for being with Krishna, rather than being with Maya, then we will learn the art of giving respect to others, even if they don't respect us. So that's done on the spiritual platform. And Krishna says in the Gita, Yaj Gyatva na punarmoham evam yasasi pandava yena bhutan yusheshani drakshasyat manyato mayi. There he's describing to Arjuna that when you do receive this knowledge, this transcendental knowledge that you can only get from self-realized souls, then you will never fall again into illusion, because you will see yourself. You will see through this knowledge. This is the purpose of knowledge, of acquiring knowledge. You will see that every living being is but a part of the Supreme, or in other words, Krishna says, they're mine. So if you're not Krishna conscious, you can't do this. And the more Krishna conscious you become, in other words, the more attracted you become to Krishna, the more love you develop, awaken for Krishna, then automatically you see that everyone is actually a part and parcel of Krishna. They belong to Krishna. So therefore you take more care. No, this belongs to Krishna. I clean it 2-3 times a day. And therefore I take better care of it than if I didn't know it was for Krishna, that it was Krishna's. Sometimes in the temple room they have the confirmed. It's going to happen again. The conch shell of Maya.
Something funny, I've been practicing driving as if Krishna is in the back seat so that I can take better care of my car and so that I can be kinder to the drivers. She's the coolest.
That's cool.
I'm so cool.
That I just want to tell you, Camille said just now that she's been practicing since she started coming around here. I'll take that as an endorsement of what we're doing. Thanks. That she's been driving her car lately, imagining that Krishna's sitting in the back seat, and the car's belongs to him, and what else? And that the other drivers.
I don't think he would like it if he saw how I was.
Yeah, and therefore he's sitting in the back seat in her mind, and she's thinking he wouldn't be very kind if I get into road rage and start to curse other drivers and everything. Nice.
It was a very childlike thing. I meant it more so just to pretend, but it actually does.
But this is what it means. This is what it means to be eligible to go back to Godhead. And Jesus Christ taught the same thing. You have to become as if a little child in order to enter into the kingdom of God. This is what it means to be innocent. Before we reach puberty, we didn't even think about sex. And then when we reach puberty, it comes on. It doesn't make any difference what you think. It's there, And we become all, like, as they say, yucky.
It distorts our communication.
Yeah, it distorts. It makes us feel strange and, feelings that are not nice, So that's very nice. And Sarva, thanks for that question. It was good. Manina manadena kirtaniyak sadahari. Very interesting, because that verse appears in the 3rd verse of the Shikshastaka, which are the only verses that were directly written by Lord Chaitanya himself. He was really busy traveling and preaching, and he didn't write very much, but he did write 8 verses, and then he got his followers to put his teachings into writing. Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, and others. So Lord Chaitanya wrote these 8 verses. The 2nd verse glorifies the holy name of Krishna. And it says that you're very kind, Krishna, because you have millions of names. And in each one of those names is all-powerful, is as powerful as you are. Plus, you don't make any hard and fast rules for chanting them, like they do in these rituals. That's one of the things that's happening in this ritual, because in the Vedic rituals, there's all kinds of rules you have to do, and if you don't do every single one of them, and if every single person is satisfied, then it ruined. The sacrifice is ruined. So at the end of that verse, Lord Chaitanya says, even though you've given me all those facilities, even though you've given millions of your names, and each one of them is fully potent as you are, and even though there's no hard and fast rules for chanting them, I still don't have any taste. So at the end of the second verse, he kind of laments, I don't have any taste. Then the next verse starts, Trinadapi Sunichina, Tarodapi Sahishtana, Amanina Manadena, Kirtani Yagsarahari. So you can't chant all the time unless you have a taste. So the third verse tells you how to get that taste. And that's to be tolerant, and to be humble, and to give respect to others, even if they don't give respect to you. But it's not an offense to feel anger towards a person who is blaspheming Krishna. If you see somebody or hear somebody blaspheming Krishna and you don't feel bad, then that's a disqualification spiritually. But if someone blasphemes you, you shouldn't feel bad. You should give back respect. And then you can balance yourself spiritually, as Sarva was hinting at. 4 more minutes. Who's next? Hannah? Wait. Matthew.
So when you're talking about being angry at someone who's blaspheming Krishna, if like you see someone like say that a demigod like Shiva is like the is God and not like calling them a demigod, do you call them out for it or just like try not to?
Well, it depends. Oops. It depends. It's not a hard and fast rule. It's not like a rule that you have to do this or you can't do that. It depends on who you are. If you're powerful enough, then you defeat that argument, put the person in his place. And in Kali Yuga, that's very difficult because nobody will surrender, even if you defeat them. They'll just keep more angry. So the best policy is just go away from that place. Excuse yourself if you have to. Oh, excuse me, I have to answer the call of nature. And you go away and you don't subject yourself to the hearing of blasphemy.
That is an interesting point, though, because Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita didn't want to go to war. He said that if he were to win his kingdom at the expense of lives, then he wouldn't enjoy his kingdom. And yet somehow Krishna was able to not convince him, but to show him the way and to show him that any action in his name or to his word is divine. So that means apparently even conflict in the name of Krishna is okay. But I am confused by that.
Yes, Liz, I got it. This is a great question. Thank you. So, spiritual life is transcendental to the modes of material nature. Arjuna was giving Krishna arguments from Shastra. Right?
Yes.
So Krishna was trying to show him that it's not spiritual life means personal. Krishna's a person and Krishna's God, and he wanted him to do it. He wanted him to do it because he had a mission to change the sovereignty of the earth so that the people, all the people of the earth, could become happy and follow religious principles, which was becoming more and more difficult under the rulership that was the prevailing rulership. So it was Krishna's mission, It wasn't that he just kind of like wanted him to do it. Or,
like the Crusades or something.
Yeah, not like that. Not like that.
This is what I thought.
Yeah, so we can transcend the laws of nature if Krishna asks us to. But we can't make it up. We can't make up our own religious principle and think Krishna told. I mean, how many people are there now walking around in the streets that do some nasty thing and then say, God told me to do it? So we can't do like that. Krishna was personally present on the battlefield.
Had a very intimate relationship with Arjuna, so this was like on a very trusted basis.
Yes, exactly. So he trusted Arjun to do it because Arjun was empowered. That Narayan. Arjun and Krishna are eternal associates. They go around one universe to another, kind of like we go from one party to another. They go from one universe to another, straightening the place out together. It's what they do. Okay, is that something? All right, it is 8 o'clock, and I'm going to turn into a pumpkin if I don't stop right now. Last night we went for an extra hour. It was fantastic. I wouldn't take it back for anything. Thank you so much, all of you, especially the newcomers. You are bringing life to us. You don't realize how important you are, even though you're new and you don't know so much. But because when devotees see new devotees coming, and if we can increase this community and diversify the community more and more, that will give great satisfaction to Srila Prabhupada, because that was his mission. And Lord Chaitanya will become pleased. So rather than just think that Krishna is just sitting over in a corner and being sad, seeing all of us suffer, join his society and help us bring people from the suffering condition to this condition, which we are actually experiencing ourselves practically. The happiness that we are all sharing together by hearing about Krishna properly is evidence in itself. It's self-evidence. So thank you, all of you. And thank you for all of you out in cyberspace for your comments and your affection and your Sangha. Hare Krishna. Lord Shiva ki jai. Brigamuni ki jai. Nandishwar ki jai. Gaur Premanandi.